everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Playwrights Unstuck. You may be surprised to be seeing me. I'm Danielle Mages-Amato. I'm the literary manager and dramaturg at the Old Globe. Your usual host, Katie Haroff, is with us, but she is having technical difficulties. So we are hoping that she'll be able to join us very soon. I'm especially hoping she will be able to join us very soon, as I am now your de facto host of Playwrights Unstuck. So what we've been doing in this 8 weeks, this is our 8th week of Playwrights Unstuck, and every week we have been spending some time with a playwright who's been commissioned by the Old Globe. These are local playwrights. A lot of them are writing their first play. Some of them are writing their 5th and 6th play for us. And each of them have found themselves at a very different point in the process. And we have been sort of identifying anything that might be keeping them stuck wherever they are in their process and seeing what they can possibly do to move on to the next phase. So today, I am very delighted to have playwright Mike Sears back with us. Maybe we can get Mike to come up on screen. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Great, good. Nice to see you.
Good, good to see you too. Let's talk a little bit, as we're hoping that Katie can come on and join us, about this piece. Let's see, when we saw you last, what we saw was a little snippet of the play that you had been commissioned to write for the Globe, which was Red Truck, Blue Truck. And the last conversation that we had, we said, hey, Mike, perhaps the best thing for you to do at your point in the process, as Red Truck, Blue Truck was sort of at a completion phase, was 1, see if there was anything you could continue to do to get the play out there, and 2, start work on your next project. So I'm wondering, one of the things we talked about was like the National New Play Network and the New Play Exchange. Have you had any luck in getting the play out there anymore so that you had been before?
Yes and no. So the resource of the New Play Network and New Play Exchange will be invaluable and will be something that the Red Truck, Blue Truck would be now poised for that. Everything is a little bit at a standstill in terms of moving new things forward, and right now I'm actually out of town and writing out of town, so I'll be back in San Diego at the beginning of September. So for me, organizationally, it will work better at that point to kind of start moving to see if I can get it someplace. But honestly, it's hard right now to spend a lot of time trying to do that. For me, like, one of the struggles I have is putting all the energy into that hustle when everything is kind of, something like that would be a little bit lower on the totem pole for someone else.
Well, another thing that might be a consideration, obviously, is that the last time we talked, you actually had a deadline on a new piece, which I think is what we're going to see a little bit of today. Hey, I think Katie might be with us. Katie, do you want to come up to the screen and join us? Are you ready, or should I connect?
My heart is beating out of my chest. No one can see me yet, but that's okay. Oh, hey there. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone at home. I'm so sorry. As soon as we were about to start, my internet went out, which was fun, which was a fun thing to happen live today. And I was like, Danielle, you can do this without me.
No problem. Well, I was just about to ask Mike to talk a little bit about the piece that he is working on, where this piece came from, where it is in its life, and what it is that we're going to see today.
Absolutely. Let's hear it. How's it going, Mike?
Great. Yeah. So this, what you'll hear today will be the very first utterance of these words, other than myself at the kitchen table. This is something that I am writing, that will be a college will be performing it in November in San Diego, and so it's a small commission of sorts to create something for this undergraduate program. And so this idea is something that I have had for a couple years, and emergence of Unstuck and the opportunity to do this kind of production of it was a real gift. So there's it's always easier to write for me when there's I mean, it's not. I don't know that's a common thing for someone like myself to say, oh, here you're going to write this and it's going to be done. So that's not usual for me. It could be something where you're going to write it and there'll be a workshop for 3 days or a day or 5 days. So it's a similar thing. But all that to say, it's being constructed. The idea of people doing it at some point. That's been super helpful. I'm just starting the writing.
So what do you have so far, Mike? What are we seeing today?
Yeah, what is this excerpt we're sharing?
So it's an origin story, and then the beginnings of a first scene. So it's 3 characters. So part of the idea is that the play starts with an origin story that sets up the bigger ideas that will be explored through the characters in the play. So what you're going to see is an older woman and a child that are telling an origin story, much like you might around a campfire or in a small gathering, and then it moves into the first scene. And the idea that I'm looking at in the play is stories that don't have an end, right? So stories that have a beginning and a middle, and then they stop, right? So like a cliched idea might be unresolved relationships, which is a bad version of it. Hoping to look at something that's a little more interesting. But so for right now, for me as a writer, the idea is, what do you do with a story that doesn't have an end, that stops? You have a beginning and a middle, and then the story stops. So
that's a really cool concept. Let's see what you have developed for today. I'm going to go ahead and we'll talk to you both after this reading that we're about to hear of this excerpt. So we'll see you in a second. Thank you for saving me, Danielle. And yeah, let's have all the actors pop up. Hi, actors. I'm going to just introduce everybody today. We have Imahni right next to me. Hi, Imahni. We have Jake back. Hello, Jake. Jake got a new do. Look at Jake's do.
What's that do?
It looks great, Jake. And then we have the wonderful Yolanda. Hello, Yolanda. Thank you for being here today. All right, and I'm going to join in on stage directions so I can be hidden. There we go. We can just see these 3 lovely faces. And let's go ahead and jump into reading. Calling My Children Home by Mike Sears. The characters are child, young woman, young man, and old woman. The setting is an ancient forest. The trees are all 100 feet tall, and the branches don't start growing until about 50 feet up. So when you look straight ahead, all you see are the tree trunks. At the very back of the space is a giant screen on which we can see projected images. Lights come up on the forest. It is midnight, summer. There is a full moon that floods the forest floor with light. Everything is still. At some point, we might hear the hoot of an owl, the quiet buzz of crickets. A breeze might gently rustle now and then. The effect is calming, vast, and mysterious. It may even feel frightening or dangerous, but not intentionally so. After a bit of time, several of the trees begin to move, their bark breaking open. Eventually, 5 humans emerge and make their way to the front of the forest. The child and the old woman sit. The others stand.
When it all began, there was only water.
Image of a giant ocean begins to appear on the screen. It is active. We view it through the trees.
And birds.
The other 3 actors retrieve birds from the space and begin to fly them about the space.
The ocean and the birds were like old friends who had just met. They would spend their days dancing in the sun, singing to the moon.
The forest crashes, and the sound of waves and the song of birds.
Playing all the games, telling all the jokes.
It's like the one about the man who never got his heart broke.
Or the one about the woman who got to say goodbye.
or the one about the kid
Who was?
never afraid.
At night, they became quiet, and the ocean would tell the birds a story to help them sleep.
Stories that hadn't happened yet.
But that didn't matter, because the birds loved them.
Yes, they did. But as the ocean told these stories, the birds would get tired, and there was nowhere to rest.
No piece of land to lay the burden down, so the ocean gave the birds a gift.
The first seed.
The birds put the seed in their mouth and flew to the sun where the heat saw the seed spring to life. Returning to their beloved ocean, they laid the seed on the waves where roots sprang forth and took hold.
The first tree.
It grew and grew vast and tall. One tree and then another and then another. The birds were overjoyed at this glorious sight, and the ocean rollicked with delight. Water receded and flowers bloomed, and the birds had a place to rest.
From a distance, the ocean watched as her darling companions settled upon the branches, singing their songs of grief and love. Longing to hear the music again, she called out, wishing them back to the sea.
For a loneliness had set in, the likes of which had never been known.
But the birds had found a home upon the land, shelter, food, water.
All gifts that sprang from the first gift.
And while they did not forget about the ocean, the world changed, and life changed, and the birds changed.
And what once seemed to be a whole life is now only a drop in the ocean.
That's a good joke, too.
Adrift in sadness, the ocean continued to call to her friends, sometimes lapping at the shores, inviting them to play.
Sometimes raging the waters until the heavens shook.
But the birds did not return. They sat in their trees, singing.
And as the song carried across the waves, the ocean rose up one last time and reached out as far as it could, hoping against hope to reach her friends.
A mighty wave that rose 1,000 feet into the sky, and it went sailing through the air, a majestic mountain of water longing to embrace a forgotten love.
It grew closer and closer to the shore, but the birds did not notice. Their song was so pure. They sang of all that had come and gone, all that was and would ever be, an aching harmony that graced the earth and banished all sin.
The ocean was alive with this music, every note piercing her heart with gladness. She could see the birds now, her dear companions, sitting, singing, soaring with all the beauty there ever was. She crested the shore, swallowed the trees, shattered the branches, and enveloped the birds in her liquid embrace. Home. She was bringing them home.
The ocean receded, and the birds were gone.
2 of the birds, but one was spared.
Abandoned.
Left behind.
Chosen.
Cursed.
Saved.
Each night, the bird would sit alone on a branch and sing to his lost sisters.
But the words were too heavy and fell to the ground.
Night after night, the falling words would gather, words of regret and loneliness, anger and heartbreak, confusion and hope, stacking higher and higher.
A phone booth slowly begins rising up out of the ground.
The bird hollowed out a stack and built a shelter.
He steps inside the booth and picks up the receiver.
Inside, he would sit, calling again and again, waiting for his sisters to answer.
But they never did.
As word of the booth began to spread, others began to arrive.
The bird would sit on the branch and listen.
A man, mid-30s, enters the space. He's wearing a backpack, hiking boots, explorer's hat, glasses that are that are on an eyeglass strand around his neck. He carries a plastic grocery bag containing a water bottle, 2 chocolate Hostess cupcakes, several pro wrestling action figures, and a deck of Uno cards. He stops at the edge of the forest when he sees the booth. He is not sure if he should approach it or what the exact protocol is. He tentatively approaches the booth, looking around. He enters and picks up the receiver.
Hello? Grandma? Are you there? It's me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Hello? Do I talk? Oh, this is weird. What the heck is this even? A phone booth? I think these are only from movies. Why can't I call you on my cell phone? Is it because you're old? And you have to use an old phone to call an old person? My arm is tired.
He sets the receiver on top of the phone so that the speaker is still accessible.
Can you hear me, Grandma? This is weird.
He takes out his water bottle, opens it, and drinks. He puts it away and takes out 2 action figures and sets them on top of the phone unit next to the receiver.
Dad says I have 15 minutes and then he'll honk and then I'll have to come back. He says this whole notion is nonsense, but Mom says it's not. I mean, she had a headache and wanted to lie down, so she didn't come.
He takes the figurine off the unit and begins to let it explore the booth, repelling, jumping, crashing.
Where did you go?
He plays.
I brought Uno cards so we can finish our game. You know, we didn't finish our game. If I win, it'll be 14-7, which is 21, which is my favorite number. Do you want to know how many games of Uno I've won? In April, I beat you 16-11, and then 11-9, and then 23-18, and then you won 15-12, and then I won 18-4 because you were tired, and then you beat me 10-9, and then 18-15, and then 16-10, and then I beat you 23-19 and 2016 and 14-11. In our last game, you were winning 17-15, but you stopped playing and were just staring, and that was weird. You know, I thought you were thinking about beating me. Is that why you stopped playing? Maybe we could play now if you want to.
He takes out the Uno cards and kneels on the ground and begins to deal them out.
I will have to tell you what you have, which might make it hard to play because I'll know what cards you have, and then I might cheat. I'm probably going to cheat, Grandma, just so you know. And then maybe I could draw for you and put it down, but I won't know what the card is. That won't make any sense. Are you going to come back, Grandma, so we can finish our game?
A woman enters the forest and stops when she sees the man in the booth. She stands there looking at him. He looks up and sees her. They look at each other a moment.
I'm not supposed to talk to strangers.
I'm sorry?
I'm not supposed to talk to strangers?
I didn't talk to you.
Well, what do you call this?
Talking?
Thank you. Are you waiting to talk to your grandma?
No.
Well, do you want to talk to my grandma? We were playing Uno and then her mouth stopped working. She can still hear me, I guess, but she can't hold her cards anymore or draw four or reverse or skip, return or change the color. And I'm probably going to win every game from now on. I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. Mom took me to see where she lives now, but I couldn't breathe when we went inside, and Dad was going to take me, but the garage was a mess, and he needed to clean it, and also it's tax time, and also his back was hurting him, and he told me to say hello to Grandma for him, and he'll visit when he has time, which he hasn't yet, but he will. He just has to finish trimming the hedges, and then he'll go once he's able to change the oil in the car so it doesn't blow up on the way to visiting her.
It's nice you can still visit her.
Yeah, I couldn't breathe when we went so I'm not going to go back. And Dad's pretty busy. Mom goes to say hello, but I can't breathe there, so Dad and I came here. Which way's the ocean?
The woman points across the forest.
I'm going to walk there. Do you want to play with my Uno cards? You can have them. And there's snacks in the bag if you want them.
Don't you want them?
No, I'm not hungry. I want to walk to the ocean and maybe swim in it. I never went swimming in the ocean before.
Do you know how to swim?
Me and Grandma watch Hawaii Five-0 every Friday night, and then we play Uno. I'm going to swim in it. Yeah, I'm not supposed to talk to strangers.
He stands, takes the figurines, and sets them on the ground next to the Uno cards and begins to leave.
Could you teach me how to play Uno?
You don't know how to play Uno? That's weird. Okay, but then I'm going to go swim in the ocean.
All right.
She approaches and kneels. He picks up the cards, shuffles, and begins to deal. End of excerpt. All right. Okay, so let's hear it for the actors, given it they're all in the Zoom world. We like to give emoji applauses in the Playwrights Unstuck universe. So if you enjoyed the reading, if you enjoyed the actors, please give them a round of an emoji applause so they know you were watching. Hello. And hello, actors. Thank you all so much for jumping into that. I really enjoy taking time and talking to the actors about what their opinions are of scripts, because at this point in most of their careers, they've seen a lot of different new plays. They've maybe even worked in new play development quite a bit. They have a front row seat in the action of play development, and they
Black arts and more black centric things like that. So yeah, look forward to that.
How cool. I know I have a really cool moderator. If you could find Imahni's company and put it in the comments, let's get some likes to Imahni. But let's chat. This is Mike's day. Let's chat about Mike. So I'm going to ask you both two questions, and maybe your answer to these questions might be combined, which is why the question of this is, what kept you interested in this piece as a performer? And then what are you still curious about? And there's so much to be curious about, but just from this reading today, what are you specifically interested in? So what you thinking, Imahni?
Yeah, well, what kept me interested for sure was definitely this whole the whole origin story of this idea of where how the land came to be, or how, you know, like it was all water, and then this and that and this and that, like just, you know, a very, very fable type origin story. And I really like that. I've been watching a lot of Avatar, Last Airbender, so I'm liking a lot of like nature, ancient origin story, things like that. So that was very interesting. And a question something that I am definitely curious about is the phone booth. I wonder what was the idea, Mike, behind making it a phone booth as opposed to anything else. Not like I think a phone booth is a great choice. I just want to know, there has to be something, right? You know why. So I want to know why.
Yeah, and we're at the very beginning of this. We were just introduced to this, and it kind of seems a little bit out of place in the environment that's been created so far. So what is its significance? How does it play into this story? And why is the phone booth a device that is holding this element forward? That's great. Thank you so much, Imahni. Hey, Yolanda, how about you, my friend? What were you interested in? What kind of questions do you have about it?
Okay, so for me, I originally had this idea of it felt like the creation, like he was talking about the creation, right? And so I put my character it was an ancient forest, And so they were almost looking down on it, these two people. And, but then, gosh, if I could get another take at it, I would actually put this character in the ancient forest, sitting around the campfire with it crackling, and her with this long white hair like a sorcerer, and ager like beyond anything. And but then my question was, is the character, the younger character, is it the child and the old woman, but in reverse? So the child, I felt like it was a child and the grandma who were talking in the beginning, but then when we come back, it's the child as an adult, but still with that child spirit, and it's the grandmother coming to visit him, but younger. I don't know where that came from. So I'm so excited to hear, you know, the story. So that was
tapped into this idea that some of the double upped characters are the same, just maybe later in the story, and that there's maybe a alternate timeline that we're playing with.
Yes, that we're going back and forth with, and in and out of this ocean and forest. And I visualize the phone booth, like Superman, a phone booth, just appearing up out of the ocean. And people, that's how they get that contact back. Instead of it being a person that lets you talk to people in the past, it's this phone booth. So.
Yeah. And the phone booth has had such interesting symbolism in film and media and literature over the years. Like we were chatting about this before we had this reading, and I think there were like several references to phone booths that were made, and you just brought up Superman, and I was like, oh yeah, Superman too, but we were like Doctor Who, and what are all of the different ways a phone booth is utilized in literature.
Mike's a big fan of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
And you said Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. If you're watching and you've got a favorite phone booth reference, go ahead and put it in the comments, and we'll think about that. What are all the different phone booth references out there that you enjoy? Thank you, Yolanda. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And then Jake, our friend Jake, our bald friend Jake. You wanted to give Mike some company with your head.
Always, he's my muse.
Oh, that's beautiful. Hey, what were you interested in? What are you still, what questions do you have?
My first thing, and it's depressing that my brain goes here first thing, considering the climate that we're currently in, is I just am like so curious, and whenever I read something that's so inherently poetic like this piece is, it's like, how is it going to be staged? And the stage direction, so there's such beautiful detail, and so I just want to see it on a stage, and I want to see how a director interprets it. And that's the thing that sticks with when I first read it. I was like, I just want to see this up. I want to see how someone interprets this and puts it up. But the other thing, and it's similar to Yolanda's, I'm really intrigued by the relationships. And I was struck this time around even more so by the idea that it's seeming like the child and the old woman are the same as the old woman and the young man. And I'm just curious about, in the way that the young man is written, he seems to be in a childlike state, the way that he's talking about things, and he's lost his grandmother kind of in that. And so I'm intrigued by if that stunted him, or if there's, you know, what we learn going forward kind of about how we got from the beginning to the middle. What happened in between the jump, and what will happen after. But it sounds like from talking to Mike earlier that maybe we will never find out, which I also love. My favorite theatrical convention. Start conversation.
Confusion. Just kidding. I love what you said specifically about the elements of design, and I completely agree. There's something to a playwright who really writes to the vision of the location of his work. And I think, to Mike's credit, in this very early stage of this piece, he created a really exciting backdrop to set this environment that he's starting to explore. Like, and I don't know if this, you know, the pieces that I've read of Mike's, it seems like environment is almost like a third character, an additional character to the piece, which I love, and I think designers love too, because it becomes a bit more of a collaboration with a playwright, instead of like taking a couple of simple ideas and running with that. And I agree, there's like this element of stunted growth in this character, because Mike was very definitive in that he's in his mid-30s, but the character himself has a lot of like youthful elements. He can't talk to strangers. He's playing with action figures as a form of comfort. So he's almost being introduced as a mystery immediately, just from his behavior. And I have tons of questions about him too. We're introduced to him with all these questions, and that's marvelous. I can't wait to see it all play out. What a really exciting piece to be on the precipice of. All right, actors, I'm gonna let you go now so we can chat with Mike and Danielle, but let's hear it for them one more time. They're gone already. Let's hear it for them one more time. We love them. We're always so happy to have them and their insight. Yay, there they are. I thank you all so much for being here and sharing your thoughts. And we'll see you real soon on the Facebook, on the Arts Engagement. Thanks, actors. And then if I could have Danielle and Mike come on up so we could chat with Mike about the piece. Hey, Mike, how was
Hi.
it? How was it to hear it out loud?
Oh, fantastic. Just awesome. So good. Yeah, awesome. Thank you so
Right?
much.
I was really excited about it just in rehearsal. I mean, and this, as you all know, as you've gone along this journey with us, there's only so much of the excitement of live theater that we can capture in individual safe Zoom rooms. And we do our best each week to bring some of the elements of theatricality to it. But I think it's a huge testimony to your work and the picture that you painted for us. And these actors are wonderful too, but like we were able to kind of approach this in a way that I thought was exciting today on Playwrights Unstuck. So thank you, Mike, for that fun.
Yeah.
Hey, Danielle, I want to like turn those questions to you and let you run with it as you usually do. But I want to know what you, in hearing it out loud, what are you interested in, and what kind of questions are already stirring up for you for Mike?
I mean, I love the idea of a place that you can go to continue the conversation that can't be continued. I think that you've made a really smart choice in this first piece. Like, I like the thought. I mean, obviously, I think that the big conversation that can't be continued comes after death, obviously, but that there's also many other ways in which our lines of connection with people get severed, and that we want to reach beyond that to complete something. And I like the idea of the game that won't be finished. Like, there's something about that that's, very evocative. Having lost people close to me, there's a feeling of like, oh, they'll never get to read the last, George R.R. Martin books, and they didn't get to see the third in that movie series. And like those things that you're like, oh, I would have loved to have heard what they would think about this thing that was halfway done, and I never got to hear the way it would be finished, or the thing they would have written, or, that kind of thing. So there's so many of those types of things, those threads that get dropped, when your connection with somebody gets severed, and the idea that you would have a place to go and try to at least work out how you feel about that loss is very theatrical. And so I think that that's incredibly evocative, and I can't wait to hear how it plays out. And I hope that some of those, just for my own personal feelings, I hope that some of those, they will be people who have been lost. to death as well. I mean, I know personally, and we talked about it, I think last time you were on, where this image of the phone booth comes from, this art installation after the tsunami in Japan, where people were calling people who had been swept away, literally swept away. And so I saw an echo of that in the idea of the birds and the birds being swept away. And I think that there's something I think that I feel that you're trying to evoke, or I'm getting from the piece, that there's something that feels very vast and very like on a level of creation and destruction, these kinds of severings, that they feel epic, or they feel, you know, fundamental in the way of like the creation of the universe feels fundamental. So I think that what I get from that is that you're trying to set up a universe in which there's something bigger than all of us. There's something beyond that we are sort of connected to, or, you know, it's almost like, you know, when in that space, when you've lost someone, when that thing has been severed, and it almost feels like a holy place that you're in, that grief feels almost like a holy place. Like to me, I saw an echo of that in this idea of this forest, this like holy place, but it's very lonely and separate. So I think there's a lot of metaphorical resonance in that.
Yeah.
Questions I have for you about like the opening, just because I know I've seen your other work, and that you like a good theatrical gesture, a nice design-based gesture, a good puppety gesture, a nice, you know, musical movement-based moment. I think it'll be really challenging to sustain that in a Zoom platform. So it'll be an interesting question for when this gets produced in that space, you know, when we're just looking at faces. I think that you're going to have an easier time with those phone calls, because just to watch the person's face do that is really compelling. But to watch the person's face read a thing that feels designy is, I think, going to be a challenge for you, and a challenge for, you know, your director and your design folks, of how to capture something theatrical in this very boxy and literal Zoom world. Will be interesting. And so, okay, I can keep talking because I have a lot of more things to say, but maybe I should let Katie ask another question, or let you.
No, do you have any specific questions for Mike at this moment about regarding the piece? I think that the actors kind of tapped into this idea of dual narratives. Is that something you were thinking? Is there like an altered timeline here?
That's a good question, and I have to say I'm so excited by what the actors shared, and Danielle, what you're saying too. Like, it really makes my mind kind of go. I know that, like, something I know from the past, that when my mind is swirling the way it is now, it's a good sign for me that I'm writing something that I should be writing, because I've had lots of ideas in the past where I have these conversations and I go, this doesn't begin to buzz around. So all that to say is that between the actors and what you're saying, in my head, I go, okay, at this early stage in the game, I could have written this and we could have done this, and then I could have gone, that's a dud. Throw that one out. I need to start over. So I guess I just want to say that this has helped me understand that this is what I should put time to. So that's kind of a thank you and off to the side.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's what we want.
Yeah, right. Yes, you know, my thought would be like something that I see really wonderful writers do that I love is that they're able to, within the content of the story, like I'm thinking of Lauren Yee. She's somebody that I see who does this well. But so many playwrights. There's like a weaving through of the stories, and there are moments that are planted that come back to fruition. Like you see the play and you understand that it all lives together kind of as a wholly constructed piece, which is something I would strive for. I do know that, like, right now at this stage in the game, like I don't I know like I'm going to have to write. Like what I find myself doing as a writer is I end up just like kind of writing a bunch of things, and then I start to see how they fit together a little bit more, and then as they come together, I go, oh, here. Like even when we were reading it, I was like, you know, him going to swim in the ocean, comes back to the ocean, right? Or that's not a great example, but those the ways that the story starts to kind of envelop and weave together in a way. So all of that to say, no, I didn't think that the old woman and the young man were the same coming back. My idea would be that the 5 actors would be a child, like, you know, 10, 11, and that there would be a young man and then the older woman. So that the young man that comes would be more Jake's age, but the origin story would be a child, 10, 11, 12, and then the older woman, you know, 70, 80. And then the character that is Jake, that Jake played, would be 30-something, and the woman that would come would be 50-something, so that those would be different. Those would have been all different actors.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's so exciting. At the moment, the thing that I'm the most excited about is the interweaving of ideas, as you mentioned, but also sort of the uncovering of this circumstance of where we really are, who these people are in this environment, and why they're here, which it feels like right now you have a lot of those answers pretty fleshed out for yourself. Do you have kind of like a path for each character visualized yet, or are you more, again, their individual stories are the things that you're kind of working on, and then you'll see how to bring them all together? Is that how you're approaching it?
Yeah, so I would say that right now, right, so I have five actors that I'm thinking of, right, and right now one of the stories would be the one that you saw, which is a young man whose relationship with the grandma that like literally like that she had a stroke in the middle of their game and is now off to you know, is in some type of facility, and that he doesn't. My thought would be that mentally there's some kind of autism or some kind of
okay. We were wondering that. We were wondering if it was something like that. Sorry, continue.
So yeah, making that more clear in the writing. And then, you know, I have one of the stories that's resonating strongly with me is two brothers, one who is lost to drug addiction and mental illness. So the brother is on the street. So one of the ideas would be a story that doesn't end, but the person is still around. You know, so the story stopped, but the person is still alive. So there's that one. I had heard a story. A friend of mine had told me a story. She was a college professor and very educated and articulate photography professor, and she had a suitor, a beau, a boyfriend of sorts, and they were both, you know, in their 50s, early 60s. He was very quiet, very small town, blue collar, and they were together as a couple, and the relationship ended. And one of his jobs was he trimmed trees, and one day he died because a tree fell on him that he was cutting down. And this was fairly soon after they broke up. And I've always been struck by that story, did he let the tree fall on him? You know, it's like someone who is a career window washer, and then they fall off the the thing, you know. It seemed so. There's a story in there to me about her surviving and not knowing the cause of his death, if it was a relationship that ended, how that happened, right? So there's that one. So those are the three that I have right now, and then I'd like to do two more. I'd like to have 5 stories.
Yeah.
And part of what I will struggle with is I'm not sure what the conflict is, right? I'm not sure what the bigger conflict, the bigger idea is, because if they're all like, how do these 5 people? Is there, you know, something that tie, like what's part of what I'll find, which is exciting in the writing, is what's the bigger idea, right? That lives in this storytelling, and how do these stories? I don't know yet how the stories are connected. Like, and within this world, does the boy go away to go swimming, and then the woman is there, and then is it happening in real time? Like I was asking Danielle, like, is there a parking lot 15 feet away, and they stopped at McDonald's before they drove here, and then when they leave, they're go to Costco, you know, or is it a? So I don't know, you know, and those questions will inform, you know, is it real time? Are these people with lives outside of the forest? You know, do I need to articulate how this phone booth exists or why? You know, how do these people know? Is it like in a guidebook? You know, how do they come here and?
So I have some questions and some thoughts. I mean, in a way, I don't know if you've ever heard of. There's a Tumblr. When Tumblr was a thing, called The Last Message Received. And people share like their last text message exchange from someone, either who they've broken up with, or who's passed away, or who they never saw again, or for many different reasons. That like a thread was dropped and this is the last message received. And it's really interesting. It's really emotional. I don't know what it is about like these ordinary, some of them ordinary and some of them very like forceful. Like what was your last message received from the person that you are no longer connected with for whatever reason? So that's something that you might take a look at and see if there's something in there that sparks your, you know, creativity going.
Yeah, go ahead. I just something too, like with the origin story, you know, so we had talked about, like, for me, the inspiration of the play is this art installation that the artist created in Japan that was a literal place where people could go to address folks they had lost in the tsunami. So in the origin story, I was trying to take the idea of the tsunami and make it a more universal idea, or to use that as the inspiration. And then I wanted to, in that origin story, 2 things. One, that the ocean is calling the birds back out of love versus destruction. You know, bringing back to itself that which it loved and had lost. And then also that the bird that's left behind, right, the ones who are left behind, depending on how you look at it, are either, you know, cursed or saved. You know, you could say, you know, they left and I'm behind. So I was chosen, I was graced, I was saved, or I'm cursed, I'm abandoned, I'm lost, right? So so both of those are true, do you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, so you were just making me think.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm curious about, the question that I had for you is, what is the process, the writing process that you are planning to go through to make those discoveries?
Somebody in our comments is also interested in your writing process.
What I'm wondering is how you're going to discover those answers. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of different ways that you could do it. I mean, do you know, is it your way to kind of sort of write all the things you know you want to have happen, and then see what comes of that, or are you going to feel like you have to make a decision first?
Yes, that's a good question. I would say that so this idea and the things that we read today and what I've been writing, I would say I end up doing a lot of not playwriting, but idea mining prior to what I wrote. So with the idea, it might gestate for many months, a lot of car rides, dog walking, dishwashing, things where I'm kind of laying in my head. Maybe I hear some of the conversations. So that process, it's just kind of living with the idea. Can I envision it? Do I see it on stage? Like last night, for example, when I went to bed, I was hearing this conversation between the two brothers, and it was kind of just like screaming in my head. And I'm like, okay, that's something to write, right? And so that relationship is alive in me. The relationship between the child or the man and the grandma, I understand. That's alive in me. The relationship that my friend had talked about with the man, the essence of that is alive in me. So as the actor, as the writer, those stories ignite me, and I go, oh yeah, okay, I want to put words to that. I can live with that. So then once I have the things that activate me and excite me to write, then I sit down. I have what I have. So now, like tomorrow, I'll go back and I'll go to where we ended today. And I really will just start to write. I don't know what I'm going to write. I don't know where it's going to go. But I'll sit down and I'll start to write, and then I'll see, does he stay there? Does he go to the ocean? Does somebody else come in? Does she leave? So it's not any more fancy than that. There's some of those stories in my head that are alive in me. I'll sit down and begin to write, and then I'll know more.
That's great.
I mean, I might just add that makes perfect sense. And I think that as an audience member, I think I would love to know more about where this phone booth came from, why it's there. But I think that's another thing that maybe you try writing it and then put in as little of it as you want to maintain the sense of mystery, or put in none of it. You know what I mean? But I wonder if maybe you want to include the story of the person who built this phone booth and what was the relationship that they were trying to, how this got here. And then maybe that doesn't work and you cut it all out. But,
well, it's a great question.
I am curious.
Because part of what I'll have to decide is the world of the play that starts with a fable, that starts with an origin story, and then doesn't move into naturalism, but is told with magical components, or so I don't know. I'll have to eventually decide. Like my thought was in this rap that the words that the bird left behind sings, like literally drop, like acorns, and that the bird is gathering them and forms them into and hollows out, right? And that over 1,000 years it morphs into this phone booth. But I agree, it feels a little bit. There could be something more there as to why that is.
I love that explanation. I thought that was really great. Like, let's theatricalize that, whatever that was.
Here's a trick. Here's the writer's trick. If you don't know what to write, just write some images and then be like, okay, design team, make that work.
Figure it out. So on that note, I'm going to gently wrap us up. I'm going to start wrapping us up. I want to say before we went live, I asked Mike if he would be interested in us hosting a reading of this piece when it's ready for a reading for that stage. So so be on the lookout for that. I'm going to reach back out to him in a month or so, kind of check in on this process, and as soon as he's ready and all of our Playwrights Unstuck writers are ready, we'll host a reading of these pieces and invite an audience audience and get some more feedback on them and just continue to be in this process with you all, because we're too interested now. We want to know what happens next. So I just want to thank Mike for being here today. And I want to ask Danielle a question that I was going to ask at the beginning of this. So if my trusty tech person could make it just me and Danielle at this moment, we'll say, but yay, we did it. So here we are, your hosts of Playwrights Unstuck. We're going to be signing out for this moment. But before we do, I wanted to see if Danielle had any last bits of tips or advice for new playwrights out there getting started in developing their first full-length play.
I mean, it's funny because we were actually having a little bit of this conversation with Mike as well before we went live. And I think that there are a lot of things that prevent us from writing and being creative. And it might be your own inner voice that says this isn't good enough, or it might be your voice might be saying, as Mike would say, this will never see the light of day. No one cares about this. And I think that as writers, I think we call it a play for a reason. It should feel like play. I think that if you can approach it with the spirit of play, and I think that for people who really want to write, we often are really good readers, and we're often really good consumers of stuff, and we really know what we like, and we might not be able to create it right away. And so that if you tell yourself that you're never going to be able to write a good play, that's fine. Write a really bad play. And that's okay too. You know, anyone can write a really bad play. You can write a terrible play. You can do it. I promise.
I've done it.
And so I say, do it. And then, you will find the parts of it that you like, and you will find ways to make it better. And the next one you write, you might get closer to the thing you want to do. But I think the only bad play is the unwritten play. The only failure of a play, I should say, because you can have a bad play. But the only failed play is the unwritten play. So just do it. Just write it. Write what it is. Write what your heart is saying. Make it play and get it done.
Yay. I'm glad I brought this back to get Danielle's solid advice. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you, Danielle, for joining us here. We love your insight. Is On Book coming back? It's coming back.
Yes. It should be back in the next week.
Next week? So
maybe next week, neither next week or the week after, depending on my guests. We'll be back live.
We'll be back, and make sure that you connect to the group. You can find it on the Old Globe page. The On Book what's the whole title of it?
It's called On Book, the Shakespeare's the Old Globe's online Shakespeare reading group.
Make sure that you follow it. It's a very, very cool offering that Danielle does weekly, and we'll be starting up again very soon. So I'm going to say goodbye to Danielle, and I'm also going to just take a moment to say goodbye to all of you. That's our show for today and the conclusion of Playwrights Unstuck. We're going to let the writers take this time to develop their full-length plays, and then we're going to be and we invite you to be on the lookout for an invitation to their readings on all of the platforms. We hope that you can join us. We've had a lot of fun working with these Globe Commissioned writers and supporting their process in new play development, and I really hope that you've enjoyed being with us every Tuesday at 3 p.m. And the next couple of weeks, you're going to be seeing some new programming coming to our pages. So make sure that you stick around. You like the Old Globe Arts Engagement page on Facebook. Make sure that you subscribe to us on YouTube, especially if you want to get off the Facebook. We all get it. Those new programmings are going to start populating on all of our social media come the end of August. And of course, make sure to catch Word Up on Fridays at 6 o'clock live on all of our Facebook, YouTube worlds. And starting tomorrow, you can watch the entire first season of Reflecting Shakespeare on our Facebook and YouTube pages, which is just a really exceptionally built program that everyone should check out, especially if you ever wanted to demystify some of the text of Shakespeare. Erica Phillips and James Pilar and Nikki are doing a really fabulous job with this, and it's all available, and you can watch it at your leisure on our pages. And of course, You can still catch me on our Facebook and YouTube pages on Thursdays at 5:30 for the Living Room Play Workshop as we continue to develop a site-specific performance that we're going to present live in our living rooms. Okay, friends, I'm going to see you on Thursday, and that is a wrap for Playwrights Unstuck. Thank you for joining us. See you soon.